Yeah, I was talking to Andrew, but now that we fixed things here,
What kind of stereo do you have?
I have a Yamaha.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I
that's
got
good
it.
stuff.
I got it from my friends Brandon and Eleni because they had bought it and they thought it was broke, so they got another one. And then it turned out that the first one wasn't broke; they just didn't have it set right, so it was collecting dust in their house. And they gave it to me, and I finally got it configured to work properly. And I'm waiting on an 8-foot optical audio cord from freaking Best Buy to pick up, so I can hook that in, and everything will be super awesome sound in my house.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was saying before that, I was watching The Mandalorian,
Yes.
binging it the past couple of days, and
Cool.
both space, western, and samurai influence, especially the most recent episode, which had a fucking awesome duel. Like
Yeah,
between,
no, it's Rosario Dawson plays Ashoka in that one, right?
I haven't seen that one yet. I'm a week behind.
Dude. Oh, dude, it's good.
Behind. But we can jibber jabber in general about all things Mandalorian related because that's definitely going to be on theme because it's Star Wars and Star Wars is 100% on theme. So we should we're already recording.
Okay.
So we should probably start telling people what theme is. So should we announce ourselves in an official way, like grown-ups? How do we feel about that?
Yeah,
I feel fine.
Hi.
You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me.
All right, hello, I'm Andrew.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Kieran.
And welcome to another episode of Shallow and Pedantic, a serious podcast about unimportant things. Tonight I am having some Blue-Eyed Blonde Ale from Independent Brewing Company.
Nice.
And we're here to talk about it's kind of a large topic. It seemed simple when we started talking about it, but we're basically talking about the glorious nexus of samurai films and westerns and all the wonderful ways that they cross-pollinate. Yeah, that's kind of our theme for tonight. A fistful of samurai, if you will. That's going to be
Visited by a samurai? What was that? Ooh.
Why do you have
blinded
to do...
by the light? No. Sorry.
Every time, Kieran. Every time.
Hey, look, man. It's be glad it's not as bad as when I used to go riding with my friends and we had Bluetooth PAs in between our helmets, and they got subjected to the ball cast.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
well, I mean, look, man. Sometimes when you're going down a bumpy road and you don't have great suspension, you feel it.
You do
in places.
These are facts. These are
facts. But I digress, as usual.
Which is what we do, so...
It is.
It's
sort of like the whole point of a podcast, even.
Yeah, it really is. How long... This is our topic. Let's talk about everything but it and come back around to it near the end, right?
And probably talk about Dune again, so...
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure there's going to be some Dune references in there.
God, I was going to say, we could avoid talking about Dune, but... I don't know. It might come in. It's not really on theme, but it's that desert.
Yep. No, it's the desert. Yeah.
Been through the desert on a worm with no name. Felt good to be out of the rain.
You can almost picture really Clint Eastwood walking through that desert as the man with no name. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like riding a sandworm. Fremen Clint Eastwood, I'm about it.
I mean, you could if Arrakis had a film industry, you could totally film fucking westerns on Arrakis. But I think at that point, I think it'd work
Would that make it a spicy Western? Sorry, I had to. Yeah,
Oh man!
Nah, I had to. Sorry.
You're a hateful motherfucker.
The
I get
spice.
one dad joke per podcast.
You
right?
do,
So,
that's it. You're cut off, Mike.
For a man with no kids, like it's pretty generous. So,
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Man with no kids, horse with no name.
We're there.
With no name.
We're there. Now we got it.
Man with no name. Yeah. Yeah. La 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 la.
Such a great film.
Which is funny because the what was it, For a Fistful of Dollars was based off of a Kurosawa film, Kurosawa samurai film.
Yojimbo.
Yep.
Yojimbo.
And The Magnificent Seven was an adaptation of Seven Samurai.
Correct.
Which basically laid down the template for, the modern samurai movie. And it's like 64, 66 years old at this point.
Mm-hmm. And what's weird about that, I just sat down to do a rewatch of Seven Samurai, and it's pretty much like plot beat for plot beat. The Magnificent Seven recreates it. It's very deliberate. There's even a wood chopping scene, and the characters are more or less similar. Seven Samurai is, of course, longer. Yeah. There's no intermission in Magnificent Seven.
No.
But yeah, they're pretty much adaptations. And Fistful of Dollars is Yojimbo.
Yep.
And what's interesting about that whole thing is that that cross-pollination works both ways.
Yes.
Like Kurosawa also has films that are recreations of Shakespeare.
Yes.
Yeah.
Throne of Blood.
Throne of Blood is so good.
It's Macbeth.
And I believe Ron
is King Lear. Yeah, it's King Lear. Ron is King Lear.
Oh, only if he had adapted The Tempest, what would we have gotten?
That would have been amazing. I would have loved to have seen that.
And there's a lot of that cross pollination. I almost want to say that the whole genre of samurai films is because the Japanese genre of samurai films kind of goes back to the time of the Meiji Restoration and the earliest days of the Japanese film industry, and it goes back to the time of the war and the Tojo regime, and when they were very like glorious samurai, sacrifice yourself for your liege lord, that kind of thing, and it took Kurosawa to kind of reimagine it, which is kind of what Throne of Blood was about. And I almost want to say that that was a deliberate attempt to create something like a Western for Japan, because they had this similar storyline. This similar chaotic devil may care, everybody grab period of their history, which was right before the Tokugawa shogunate. And so they had something that was like a Western, and that's kind of where I want to get into this whole thing about like samurai is to Japan what Western is to America, because they're both homegrown genres of romance in the oldest sense of the word romance, not necessarily anything of eros.
Well, they both work tidily as propaganda.
Yes,
for like this, for the spirit of what is sort of being pushed culturally at the time. With the Western, you have the propagation of the concept of manifest destiny, like Go West, Young Man, and all of that. And then in the samurai genre, it's very much a right leaning, like very far right actually, like sort of harkening back to the old days and, to duty to, liege and lord, and, you lay down your life for the glory of the empire, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, it was, they've both been used as propaganda for sure.
Yeah, but they can be used that way and have been used that way, but they've also been used to expand upon the story, because I think when you have a set of stories that has this much inherent conflict in it, you start doing things like meditating about the bad guys.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm just an unrepentant fan of Westerns, and I love John Wayne movies, and I've seen a lot of them, and you would think, because it's John Wayne, that they would all be, like, heavily propagandized films, but when you sit down and watch them, they're not as westerns. Like,
Sure.
There's stuff like El Dorado, which is, the bad guy is a successful cattle baron businessman. He's the bad guy. And you've got The Searchers, which is a very, heavy meditation on the whole wiping out of the natives. And it's not, I wouldn't call it a Manifest Destiny message, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah, no. And I mean, like, it's interesting to me, sort of like the, in the Westerns, it's like the secret villain was capitalism all along, which is kind of funny. Not always, but like in if you take it to its logical conclusion, you're like, hey, wait a minute, all of this is being driven by market forces and expansion westward, which is caused by what?
Yeah.
And then, and it's, and in some ways, like in all of the samurai movies, especially from Kurosawa on, the real enemy is modernity. It's a changing world and a lifestyle that's not really going to, endure necessarily, in the face of a changing world.
Yeah, it's that shove from order into chaos, which I think any good romance of anybody's culture is about restoring something that's like a peace and an order and a justice that people can live under. Something has to be cast down and something has to be built up. And in Seven Samurai, you've got these bandits have to be cast down, and it's kind of so too do the samurai if the people can actually are going to be able to survive. And that's kind of that, the peasants won, we lose. We always lose, which is the same line they use in Magnificent Seven.
Yep. Well, and in Seven Samurai, the guys are basically doing it for a bowl of millet a day, essentially.
Yeah.
They're not getting paid. They're not even getting paid in rice. It's it's kind of crazy. I think they are getting paid in rice, but it's like they're only going to get it at the end, and what they're being fed in the meantime is millet, and it's it's the kind of thing where, like, arguably each of these guys are people that could ask for actual money, real cash to go and do this thing, and all of them are just sort of like, well, the hell with it. I'm just we're just going to do it because we're here. We're going to do it because it's the, essentially because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
And a tasty way to do it.
Yeah. And that's the thing that binds it together. That's why you can take Yojimbo and turn it into Fistful of Dollars, is because there has to be some kind of good that comes out of the chaos. Man with No Name, he doesn't care about anything. He's playing both ends against the middle. He is literally amoral. He's an anti-hero until the one bad guy shows that he's really kind of bad, and you know what? I really don't like you, and you know what? You need to die. And everyone's going to be better off as a result.
Yep.
You get into some even stranger westerns when you start getting into like Long Plains Drifter and like Pale Rider, which
Pale Rider.
Those like Long Plains Drifter and Pale Rider have very heavy elements that suggest they may be supernatural without outright. It's a subtext, certainly not the text, but like
right.
those two.
Yeah, in Pale Rider, he's a preacher, isn't he?
Yeah, but it's implied that he has returned from the dead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because there's that scene where he's like, bet you there's gold under that rock, and then he goes and he splits the rock open, he's the miner guy, and then, like, sure enough, they find a bunch of gold underneath of it.
Oh, wow, that's Old Testament. That's Moses right there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's not water from a stone, it's gold from a stone, but it's literally, like, biblical shit, and he just... there's a bunch of like direct biblical parallels.
No, yeah.
In that movie, but yeah, it's implied that he's returned from the dead.
And there's a similar implication in Long Plains Drifter, wherein he enacts a massive vengeance against this town in the name of, quote, helping them because of the death of what... It suggested he's some sort of revenant in that he's returned from the dead to see... but again, subtext.
Right.
It's entirely subtextual. So,
yeah.
I haven't seen that one in quite a while, but I recall it being very, very vivid. That is one of the interesting differences too when you get to your later westerns and samurai movies. Is almost every samurai movie I've ever seen, at least everything by Kurosawa, black and white.
Sure.
Whereas even some of the John Wayne's later ones were color.
Yeah,
I think even some of his mid-range ones were.
By the time you got to the 50s, westerns were in color.
Yeah.
So all the really good, except for like Stagecoach, all the really well-known John Wayne movies were all in color.
Yeah.
And I think what ties samurai movies and westerns together is those conflicts and those wonderful heroic figures that emerge from them. Who are able to right wrongs and stand for those that can't stand for themselves, and they're kind of like, in that way, it goes all the way back to even older romances, like something out of like mythology, or
even you could even go so far as to say like, I mean, this isn't necessarily true for samurai flicks, but it's in the same, sort of genre of romance, like I mean, even the Arthur legend, like that itself is like is a romance. Any of the great enduring mythos are ultimately just sort of these romantic structures. Yeah,
Song of Roland.
If I might present a bit of advice, when it comes to Arthurian legend and Arthurian romance, never date a woman with a Guinevere complex.
Okay, good to know.
Touche, good sir.
What if she's named Guinevere? Is that a red flag?
That is even... I mean, as long as she doesn't obsess about it.
Okay.
Let's just say I done been Arthur.
Okay.
And I done dealt with a motherfucking Lancelot.
All right. We all know how that goes.
Yeah.
I don't play the trombone, but if I did, it would be very sad for you right now.
Yeah, well, I find it is good to be able to look upon the present and say it is not the past.
Yes.
Touche, sir.
Well played.
Well, I try. But like a song, Beowulf, friggin'
yes,
Gilgamesh.
Absolutely, yeah. Gilgamesh. Yeah.
I think Gilgamesh more than Beowulf. Although Beowulf has that wonderful third act that seems to be a completely different story, but it's like the king when he's old, and he has to fight the dragon when he's old, and then he dies, and the dragon dies too, but now everyone's like, the king is dead, what are we gonna do? No, the winter's coming and we're all gonna die. It's like that tendency towards tragedy, that tragic view. What was the other one? Gilgamesh. Yeah. I recently read that for the first time, and it's almost
really?
I never read it in high school.
Huh.
But I sat down and read it one time. I think I got through most of it. I was waiting in the emergency room for something. And
Immortality?
Yeah, I was waiting in the emergency room for immortality. It didn't come. And I read it, and it's that whole long journey and that long journey back, and that there's something to that, the whole concept of the journey, which is, I think, part of the romance. You have to go somewhere and change something. And that's like the first 45 minutes of Seven Samurai is just going on the journey and gathering the characters. And we all gather together, and then we're going on the journey to to do the right thing. So I think there's all these... it's all connected, is the point I'm trying to make.
And I think in the romantic genre, there's this component of you're either trying to restore or transform something, and those are definitely themes in both samurai yarns and in westerns. More so with trying to restore something in the samurai yarns, but not always. Not always. I mean, there's definitely a theme of transformation. You know, any samurai film that shows guns is sort of, you know, pointing to the future and what's, you know, and
Isn't that
what's
Yojimbo?
coming. I mean, that's in Seven Samurai too.
Is it?
Oh yeah, no, especially during the second half, because the bandits actually have a few guns, and there's one of their number secrets off and goes and manages to steal one, and he actually, it turns the odds for them.
A little bit of historical information here. There's a certain type of Japanese helmet, kabuto, samurai helmet, that only started being made and manufactured after the introduction of firearms because it was sloped in such a way as to make bullets slightly less effective.
Kind of like those trench helmets of the First World War.
Exactly.
They were really just designed to like make shrapnel kind of curve away from your skull. You know, wouldn't stop a dead-on shot, but like, you know, might cause something to care him if it was an indirect hit.
Like, once firearms got introduced to, I mean, samurais were using firearms. I mean, they were little more than breech-loading muskets, if that, but they loved them, and they made them ornate as hell.
Of course they did. Yeah, that was that whole period of restoring that order was the Tokugawa shogunate, and at that point they'd already had some contact with the West, saw what firearms were, and sort of introduced them. Like that was a plot point in James Clavell's Shogun, as I recall.
I remember watching that with my father.
The musket regiment. Yeah.
If I recall properly, chronologically, there was overlap between the samurai era and the Western era.
Yeah.
No, there were.
Yeah, because the Matthew Perry was in the 1850s, and
correct.
That was definitely in the time of the Western. So that Tom Cruise Last Samurai movie was by no means as ridiculous as it seemed in terms of chronology.
Only in that it had Tom Cruise and therefore ridiculous.
Yeah, anything Tom Cruise has gotten more and more ridiculous as it goes on, culminating in The Mummy.
I couldn't.
I couldn't, but I will at least give him props for his part in Tropic Thunder, which was
Well, yeah, that's a whole different thing.
That's an entirely different thing. But
that is one of the better satires Hollywood has done of itself.
Very true.
I think that was perhaps the most self-aware role I'd ever seen him in.
Right? That was completely playing against type.
I do. I think it was going to come out, and I don't know if they're still doing it, but Chadwick Boseman was supposed to be in The Tale of Yosuke, and I may be mispronouncing this, who was like a black samurai.
It was a real person, yeah. That really happened,
He had been brought as a slave, I think, by a Portuguese priest, and I could be wrong on the nationalities here.
Portuguese is probable, yeah.
And he ended up being given over, I think, to a shogun, maybe? Again, I'd have to actually...
A shogun or a daimyo or somebody.
Or something like that. And he ended up becoming a samurai. And the funny thing is, no one's really certain what happened to him. Like, they have historical record of him, but there's no record of his death.
Who knows?
And they were going to make a movie about that, which would have been pretty interesting. Modern samurai movies are... they don't quite have the flavor of the ones from Kurosawa's era. That's for damn sure.
Well, no, nothing does. Because
nothing does.
Kurosawa was an artist. He was one of the great ones.
Tarantino tries, though.
I was literally just thinking of that. Like, Kill Bill is kind of both.
Yeah.
No, it's both a samurai movie and a Western, especially when you get into part 2.
Absolutely.
Like that whole sequence of when they're out in the desert. It gets very Western. Like Michael Madsen is very much doing the cowboy thing.
He is.
Oh yeah.
And he's the joke is that he sold his samurai sword, but he didn't really.
No, yeah, that's the whole like, how could you? That was a Hattori Hanzo. It was priceless.
And he's like,
it had a price.
It had a price, but it's weird because he didn't actually do it. He was just messing with Bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was lying, and I'm not really sure why, except that they were brothers and he's messing with him.
Yeah, like and also I never really saw the Django Unchained, but I did see the Hateful Eight.
Yes.
And the Hateful Eight, that, in my opinion, was a very well-paced Western.
Yeah, Hateful Eight was good. I like Tarantino in his Western phase.
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed Hateful Eight. I thought that was good.
That
was good stuff.
Which is kind of where he is right now. Like, I consider Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to be a modern Western.
Oh, yes, most definitely.
It's definitely got the beats of one, yeah.
Yeah, because it's also one of the more interesting films about Hollywood because you've got that great contrast between the star of Westerns, which is DiCaprio. He plays the star, but he's not really a heroic person. He's not really a heroic character. And then you've got Brad Pitt, who's a stunt double, and he's the real deal. Like, you could put a cowboy hat on and put him on a horse. He's the real deal. He's a cowboy, and so there's that contrast, which is itself a meditation on the film versus the reality, and of course the film destroys reality in a way that made everyone smile.
Yes, I agree.
Light the hippies on fire. Light them on fire.
I mean, they burn well. I don't know what to tell you.
They're already burned, man.
If you can deal with the stink of burnt bacon and patchouli, I think you're...
But yeah, I think Tarantino doing Westerns is fantastic. I think he should do more of them.
I hope he comes back to the samurai as well.
He should. And if he can do another crossover like the way Kill Bill worked. Because Kill Bill felt incredibly Japanese.
Mm.
In the sense that it had that spirit and that mood and that tone. While at the same time doing Western stuff as well.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And tying in some elements from the old Shaw Brothers Kung Fu films, too.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, he apparently, that animated sequence that's in Volume 1 of Kill Bill, he apparently met with the, I forget which studio it was, but rather than, like, going to them with storyboards, he just basically talked at them, like, I think also using a translator and, like, acting out what he wanted to happen for, like, 6 hours.
I have zero difficulty believing that that's what happened.
And they're, and apparently they were all, like, really irritated with him, but he was incredibly pleased with the outcome, and I'm kind of like, well, I mean, it's some good storyboards that pretty much do the same thing, but
whatever.
Yeah, so
it's like Brian Eno recording an album by dancing and telling his musicians to play what he's dancing.
That sounds like something Danny Elfman would do,
right?
Or Danzig, either way.
Whatever, man. Whatever. It's all good.
The modern Western, now that's a thing unto itself as well.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get many of those anymore, or good ones for that matter.
I disagree. Have y'all not seen Bone Tomahawk?
I've never even heard of it.
Oh, you gotta... Yeah. You liked Hateful Eight, right?
Oh, yeah, loved it.
Well, Kurt Russell, right?
Oh, that
it's been on my
reminds me of
list.
Tombstone.
I still haven't seen it.
I had forgotten about that. I'd forgotten about Tombstone and near anything Sam Elliott's ever been in.
Kurt Russell he does a John Wayne impression without really doing a John Wayne impression better than anyone I've ever seen. And he can do it like consciously, like in Big Trouble in Little China, where he's just basically doing John Wayne lines.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but when he's so good at doing westerns now that he's got like bushy whiskered and stuff. So you got to check out Bone Tomahawk. It came out a couple of years ago. It has a famously gruesome ending scene, which I will not reveal anything about, but it's a really good movie in that it doesn't shy away from being what it's about, and it visually it's nicely it tells its theme as it goes along. Its pacing is very good, and I enjoy it. I've had people I've recommended it to him. People are like, that was okay, I guess, and I've had recommended it to people, and they really liked it. But it's probably the best Western I've seen in the last several years. The Western is that genre that they keep pronouncing dead.
Yeah.
Especially after that terrible, what was that movie that came out with Johnny Depp? What was that?
Oh, it was The Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger, right?
Oh, God. I had forgotten about that.
They screwed up The Lone Ranger, and they made a mess of it. Everyone said, "Oh, the Westerns are over now," but they're not really. You just have to take the elements of the story and tell a good story. Like, the backdrop's there.
Unlike
sure.
Wild Wild West. Oh, look, giant steam-powered tarantula, which should make a movie great. Like, giant steam-powered mecha spider in a Western? I mean, sign me up, but no.
Well, you know what was funny was when right before that movie came out, and for a little while after it came out, they actually were showing reruns of the old Wild Wild West TV show. Mm-hmm. And so I caught a couple of episodes of it, and I was like, this is campy as shit.
It is.
But I was like, but this show is better than this movie.
It is.
So
another Western in a similar vein, TV show, Briscoe County Jr.
Oh, God, I've forgotten about that.
I got it on DVD.
Of course you do.
Of course I do.
Of course you do.
And was just... Oh, go on, I'm sorry.
Now, let's put a pin in Briscoe County Jr. for a second, because that's a whole area. But I do want to comment on the fact that I used to watch the old Wild Wild West show when it was in syndication with my dad, because he loved it.
Yeah, my dad loved it too. Yeah.
And it was kind of a Western, but it was also kind of like a mystery show.
Yeah, no, that was and it was a little bit of like there was a bit of like MacGyverism and
yes.
like a certain amount of like definitely like there's some MacGyverism in as much as we've got to find a way to solve this problem.
We've got a problem to solve. It's not just like it was kind of a arty kind of Western for a nationally syndicated television show, but it was clever. It had a new wrinkle on it. And so too did Briscoe County Jr., although it didn't last as long. I think it lasted like, what was that, 2 seasons?
Something like that.
It had a, God, I haven't thought about this in forever, and I used to watch it weekly. That was actually my introduction to that actor.
Bruce Campbell?
I hadn't seen Evil Dead movies before I watched Briscoe County Jr. So when I finally saw an Evil Dead movie, I was like, hey, it's the guy from Briscoe County Jr. And everyone looked at me funny. Like, you're trying to watch Army of Darkness and people are making Briscoe County Jr. references and you're not the cool guy in the room anymore.
Maybe. Depends on the room, depends on the guy, but yeah. What's his name? The guy that played the original Gomez was in there too on occasion.
John Astin?
John Astin is a wacky old scientist.
Yes. I almost want to say Briscoe County Jr. had a kind of Wild Wild West vibe to it, in the sense that there was also like, they were bringing in tech, and they were telling historical stories, and there were problems to be solved. And it also almost had kind of like a kung fu vibe to it as well.
Yeah, I think wasn't there time travel towards the end of that show? I never got to see the end.
There was
of it.
aliens.
Okay.
Good God.
And a land tank, which I think was crewed by pirates, but don't quote me on that one. It's been a while.
I think that show decided to stop taking itself seriously, and good for it.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Damn right.
Yeah.
I was going to jump in real quick. 2 of my favorite, more modern Westerns, and they're a bit older now because they're from the earlier 90s, earlier half of the 90s, but number 1 is Tombstone. Which
of course.
Has a fantastic ensemble cast.
Tombstone's fantastic.
You know, Val Kilmer is the best Doc Holliday.
Yeah, he really is.
No, he does an amazing job. For about a month in high school, I kind of wanted to be him.
We all wanted to be him in high school. He was so cool.
But then the other one is actually Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, and that was sort of his return to the genre after having not really been in a Western in, I think it decades at that point, probably since the 70s.
I think there was whatever year Outlaw Josie Wales came out. That was like 81, or maybe Pale Rider was 81. He did like one in the early 80s, and then there was a gap for 10 years until like 1992, which is when Unforgiven came out.
Yeah.
I was for a while watching Deadwood, which was a pretty good show.
Oh, Deadwood.
Yeah, that was
never did get to see it.
Deadwood's,
oh, you would have loved it, man.
Deadwood's great. Deadwood is the Western as Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the sense that the way that they talk, they elevate the 19th century dialogue, that poetic self-overhearing, to the point where it becomes Shakespearean. It's kind of it's just a treat to listen to them talk, and it's full on. It's a Western, but it's almost a noir at the same time.
Yeah. It's got, what's his face? He played
Ian McShane?
Ian McShane.
Yes, thank you. Ian McShane, who chews the scenery in that show.
With relish and pickles.
And I think Timothy Olyphant is
No, that's Timothy Olyphant. Timothy Olyphant, who was in The Mandalorian at the beginning of this season. It was a great turn for him. And who's also in what you might consider a modern Western series, Justified.
Yes,
Oh,
Justified.
yeah. I've watched a few episodes of that.
That was a great attempt at giving a kind of a Western vibe to a story set right in the modern day. And I stopped watching it somewhere in the third or fourth season, but it was a really good show that I enjoyed, because they always found a way to make him like draw and shoot a guy, like you do in a Western, like in one of those old Western TV shows.
Yep.
Yeah.
From the 50s. And that was always an entertaining gimmick. And Timothy Olyphant, he's just great. I'll watch him in just about anything.
Well, in a similar vein, actually, I was going to say Breaking Bad is very much a modern Western.
Yes. A different kind of a story, but it has a Western vibe to it because it's set in New Mexico. And it's... a lot
of the story beats follow, like, Western, like it follow like a Western story, like yeah, sure,
because there's conflicts of control, and like inevitably, like somebody has to get stared down, some villain has to be defeated, which is kind of a trope of almost all prestige television shows, but in Breaking Bad it definitely comes out with that lonesome desert feel to it, even if the story is primarily about a Faustian bargain.
Yeah. Do you remember, I think it was in the 90s, it was a film that came out, it had Mario Peebles, Big Daddy Kane,
I know what Posse. It was Posse, yes. I didn't see that.
I did. It was enjoyable. I can't remember the exact story beats, except it was a Western. It was Western story beats, so the vengeance and all that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It's actually very, very well done. I felt.
Fair enough.
As far as Westerns go, pretty well done. I mean,
I never got to see all of it. I caught parts of it on like basic cable, but I never really managed to catch it at the beginning.
Yeah,
I know you gotta watch it on basic cable because you lose a lot.
I feel like it's a basic cable kind of movie, though.
It is. I mean,
it's.
I didn't say it was high theater. I just said it was pretty good. Yeah.
I'll try and find it. Give it a watch.
You mentioned Tombstone. Tombstone always had that great Hollywood feel to it. It felt like an old school Western.
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And the year after that was Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
Which is the one that everyone's like, this isn't Tombstone, and I don't like it, even though it's basically the same story. But if you give Wyatt Earp a rewatch, it's one of those films that really improves on rewatching. It doesn't have Val Kilmer chewing the scenery.
No.
You've got Dennis Quaid playing Doc Holliday in a weird kind of a weird turn, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
He doesn't chew the scenery like Val Kilmer, but he does kind of like in the scenes that he's in, he does kind of like take center stage and is very quiet. Like it's less theatrical tuberculosis, but it feels more like the way suffering from tuberculosis would be. And Costner's turn as Wyatt Earp, it has a wonderful ice quality to it where it feels way more real. Like, if you were, like, to actually have met the actual Wyatt Earp, it would probably have been more like that guy.
Yeah, well, it's real life. Wyatt Earp was not a very nice man.
No.
But you kind of couldn't be back, you know. So,
And that's the point. So it's like, you've got, like, a 1-2 punch of, like, Tombstone and Wyatt Earp, and Tombstone is the legend, and like they say at the end of Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, when it comes to truth in the legend, print the legend.
Yeah.
Print the legend.
Which reminds me of two, what's they, 80s or were they 90s? Young Guns.
Oh,
1 and
God.
2.
Another movie about basically fighting off a cruel political cattle baron.
Yeah.
Same vibe, same kind of story as El Dorado or Rio Bravo, which are both basically the same story.
Oh, the remake of, what is it? The 30 Minutes to Yuma.
310 to Yuma.
Yeah,
310 to Yuma.
yeah.
The one with Christian. That one was. Ooh, that was good.
I like that. Yeah, and I've never
That one
seen
was
the
good.
original. I've heard the original's amazing, but I did like the remake of 310 to Yuma. I thought it was a good story, well told.
Yeah, that was. I remember that being really, really good.
And this
Did you
is.
guys...
Go ahead. No, you go ahead, Mike. I can.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, did you guys, did either of you ever see any of the old like Sam Peckinpah directed movies? I think the only one I ever saw was The Days of Judge Roy McBeanfield, which is a weird like freaking title, right? But it's actually what's his name, Newman.
Okay.
Paul Newman.
Paul Newman.
And it's a really it's actually ends up being a really crazy movie. And it sort of ends up being a Western, but it's also sort of like the tall tale of who this guy was.
Right.
And it's like there's a lot of violence in it, which is what Peckinpah was known for. To me, like I saw this as a child.
Of course you did.
I was in grade school, and I was just like, this is too over the top to be like. It was funny.
Uh-huh.
Like I was laughing at it when people were getting shot because I was like, that's ridiculous. So.
Yeah. Oh Lord. Which one do I do?
What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of something else.
Blazing Saddles comes to mind.
Oh
yes.
Lord. Well, that's Mel
the greatest
Brooks.
Mel Brooks. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna say that you're right because it's the one that ages the best. I used to really like History of the World Part 1, and after like the 10th or 15th time seeing History of the World Part 1, all the jokes kind of stopped being funny because you've heard them 1,000 times, you've quoted them endlessly. But Blazing Saddles just keeps getting funnier every single time I watch it.
Oh yeah.
I do not get tired of it. I keep finding new jokes to enjoy. Stuff that I didn't think was that funny the first time around becomes hilarious.
In Game of Life, Mongo is just gone.
He's just calling in Big Game of Life. Candy grab for Mr. Mongo. Shit, someone else is probably going to take credit for that.
Yep. Yeah, I was just thinking of that. The pain was inventing the candygram, and they probably won't give me credit for it neither.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Another. They don't do a lot of parodies of westerns. I find.
Yeah,
No.
not as you would think that it would be.
Yeah, that's what I was
That
just
there would
thinking.
be more of them. Yeah, no, there's not really that many.
I think. I don't know. I think there's not much to do in terms of making this stuff funny, other than sending up the material. And even in Blazing Saddles, it's the same story.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Oh,
Bad politician trying to, stomp on the little folk, and noble heroic sheriff saves the day. I mean, they wink at it from behind the fourth wall, but they tell the same story. I think that that's just the kind of story that people end up responding to on a very, very basic level.
Yeah, it's very true. And people like a sense of justice.
They
you
do.
know. It is one of the biggest human conceits, really, is our sense of that there must be justice, that there should be fairness, equality.
Sure. Justice stems from a basic rationality.
Yes.
If you can perceive reason, you can perceive justice. They kind of go hand in hand together.
And I think that's something that's present in both of the genres. Both samurai films and westerns. But like I think it's less maybe in the samurai films. It's more like I'm trying to do what is right as is appropriate to my station.
Mm-hmm.
But doing what you are, sort of noblesse oblige, literally, like for it, because they were, pretty much all of the samurai, even like the ones that were barely literate, had maybe only had like a short sword or something. Like they were still aristocrats, like they still had titles, and there were certain expectations placed upon them by society.
They belonged to the warrior caste.
Exactly, and they're feudal lords, so it was, there were certain expectations that came with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Milieus is that the samurai, that's an aristocratic tradition. Which raises the question of why they don't bother more, and maybe it's just because I'm not all that familiar with the filmography of Europe, why they don't make more knight films in Europe, like in the English film world or the French or German film world. Why don't we get stories of knights the way we get like samurai films? Why isn't that a genre? And maybe it is.
Mostly you get, for night films, with a couple of exceptions, tend to meld over into either Arthurian or fantasy. Like,
that's true.
Like, actually, one of the better movies I recalled that, had a knight in it, which was ruined by a terrible modern soundtrack, was Lady Hawk.
Oh, right, Lady Hawk. Yes,
with
yes.
Rutger Hauer, and terrible soundtrack, but otherwise a pretty,
I heard
that in that.
There's a cut that's you can find now where they actually replaced it with the orchestral soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Probably sounds a lot better.
Yeah, like I read about that recently, where you can find a version of Lady Hawk now that they got rid of, what was it, like Tangerine Dream or something that was doing.
Oh,
like
good
that,
lord!
Something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. Like
whereas a modern soundtrack works very well in A Knight's Tale.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well,
it really
That's
makes the
true.
whole movie come together. It's jousting as a sporting event. Well, which it pretty much was, but as in we do modern, football and things like that, which I think made Knight's Tale work pretty well. But you are right, the genre is pretty sparse. If it's not like a fantasy movie or an Arthurian movie, which reminds me, Excalibur was really, really good.
I love Excalibur. I love it so much.
Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren, just...
Yeah, it's like the guy saw Monty Python and the Holy Grail and said, let's make that movie, but let's do it straight. Let's do it for real.
Yeah.
Because Excalibur came out in like 1980 and Monty Python's was 1974.
Yeah.
And I'm that guy who, when I watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail and they get to that castle and they ride the Viking longship to the castle and that wonderful music swells right before they run into the French again and they throw like garbage and ducks at them again. There's that moment where you're not in Monty Python and the Holy Grail anymore. You're in some amazing medieval adventure, and I kind of want it to stay there. Just for a second.
And Holy Grail was so well researched that it's actually considered a primary source for people researching like medieval costumes and armor and all of that stuff.
Yeah, they did a good job on that.
One movie that I was hoping was going to be like a historical exploration was Season of the Witch with Nick Cage and Ron Perlman, which I had been falsely convinced to go see by an ex.
And I'm sensing a theme, Kieran.
There's a theme. But I go to see this movie and I'm like, oh, so this is just like a historical drama about, witch burnings and all that. Wait, that's a demon. What the fuck is going on in this movie now? God damn it, Nick Cage.
You should know better than to trust Nick Cage.
Yeah, but I thought Ron Perlman knew better.
Have you read his Twitter feed lately?
I mean, Ron's got to eat.
I mean, Ron does gotta eat, but come on, man, you were in like Blade 2 and a couple of Hellboy movies and that show Beauty and the Beast, dude. I mean, come on, Ron, help me out here. Don't hurt me like this.
You're not helping your case here, Kieran.
I'm totally helping my case.
The first Hellboy movie was fine.
It was. I enjoyed it. And samurai film, like the American samurai film, you get more of American kung fu films or martial arts films than you really get samurai films.
That's
we
true.
We fetishize the katana to a level that is completely insane.
Yeah, it's not a lightsaber. It's just
not.
a sword.
I mean, a katana will cut your fucking head off, but it will not cut like
It won't cut through plate armor. Like if you're a medieval knight and you fight a samurai, your armor will probably do you good.
Part of the reason I had to fold the blades, for the katana was because the iron ore that they could get in the Isles of Japan was so incredibly shitty and sandy that you couldn't just do like we're gonna melt it down and smelt it, create steel, just quench it, and then there you have a sword. It was like, no, we've got to do this over and over and over again because the iron ore was just really not that great.
And you would hammer it to knock the impurities out because it had a high level of phosphorus and sulfur in it, in the blade. And so the hammering process, literally the folding the hand, was just to knock the impurities out so you wouldn't have a brittle, useless blade. There's no mysticism to it. Certainly a lot of artistry, but it's just, they had shit metal and they had to do the best they could with it, but they turned it into literally an art.
Oh yeah.
And ritualized it to such an extent that, the closest we get to seeing that is we get to see the opening couple scenes of the original Conan where they're making, Conan's father is making the sword and not even doing it the right way because swords were not cast,
Of course
not. Swords are not cast, but here we go. We're casting a sword. Well, okay, this is already bullshit, but it's already bullshit.
Actually,
and now we're gonna plunge it in the snow. That is a very bad idea.
No. That's very Japanese, like artistry and craftsmanship as a consequence of adversity.
Yeah,
you have these islands that are. They're not very strong in resources. They're very rocky, and so the people that live there have built a level of craftsmanship in order to get what they needed from the land.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, it's in a lot of that's actually a theme in a lot of the samurai movies. Is one of the characters in every film is the weather or the landscape, right?
Yes.
Because it's
100%.
It's pretty unyielding. If it's the rainy season, like, good luck getting anywhere.
Right.
Because
the Mongols roads discovered that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's like the roads, which are normally not great for like passage, like in the at the time of when this genre takes place, are even worse when it's been raining for months.
Yep.
So
100%, and definitely in Throne of Blood, the landscape is a character. It's almost like on the nose. The landscape is a character because we begin and end at this place that is no longer there, and the hills and the castle and the woods itself seem to be enemies, and they find an almost more direct way to do the Burnham Wood become to Dunsinane.
Yeah.
Scene.
Excellent. Yeah.
Throne of Blood is excellent.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But I mean the other thing I would say is like I think very much because of the themes of isolation in westerns, right?
Yes.
The landscape and the weather there, probably more the landscape, but it's like here this is vast open space. That's a character too.
Yeah.
So.
And realistically so, like when you go out there to what is still the American West, which is still very sparsely populated comparatively, you get that vibe. You get that feeling, you get the emptiness of it. I'm reading a really good book about the Comanche Empire of the Summer Moon, which is about the history of the Comanche nation. And they were one of those Indian nations that had almost been driven into out of existence by other nations, and were basically hiding in the caves. They were almost troglodytes, which is kind of a shout out to Bone Tomahawk if you ever get around to seeing that. But then they got horses, and somehow that changed everything. And then they became one of the most powerful nations in the Southwest. But the book talks about, if you live in the eastern half of the United States, you have no idea what a blizzard actually is. You think a heavy snowfall of like 12 inches is a blizzard. That's not what a blizzard is. A blizzard is where you can't walk out of your house because there's nothing there but white.
I had a friend, he had taken a vacation for like 2 weeks, and he drove across country, and he hit Wyoming.
Oh, dear.
And he hit a blizzard, and he lost a wheel off his truck.
Yep.
I got to hear about this story when he came back. I'm like, that's some wild shit right there, dude.
Mm-hmm.
You lost a wheel off your truck in a blizzard in Wyoming? How are you still alive?
Yeah. The land is a character. The land creates the story. That's why John Ford knew what he was doing. He was filming all that stuff out in Monument Valley for a reason.
Oh yeah. Well, Monument Valley is picturesque. Like it's there's actual features. It's it's pretty, but
it's also sublime because they're like gigantic monoliths of rock. The land is looking down on you.
No, absolutely, and it's it gives you a sense of scale and perspective, whereas so much of the regular landscape in the Southwest just kind of vanishes off into the horizon, and you don't, it's like, oh, there might be elevation, there might not, but you can actually see the vanishing point like in the distance. The speed limit here is 85 miles an hour because you can literally drive that fast, and as long as there's not another car in front of you, you're just not going to hit anything.
Nope, your speed will be limited by the environment
and your engine.
No, it's a wild thing to see when you're out there. You're on the highway, you're heading either east or west, and the highway just vanishes into the horizon, and you're like, oh, okay, this really happens here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always, in my younger years, I always wanted to try to take a motorcycle out that way, because that'd be a hell of a way to experience it.
There's a reason biker gangs
Just
love
not
it
in
out
the
there.
winter.
No. The winter is not your friend out there. Not your friend.
The winter is not your friend.
Not your friend.
The winter has things to say about your life choices, and none of them are good.
Nope.
Yeah, but one of the things I would say about both of these genres is like, invariably the primary conflict is usually man versus man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that there's a sub-conflict or a sub-factor that always has to be taken into account by everyone involved is the landscape, is nature, is the weather. So I always feel like there's sort of a man versus nature element to most of these films in both genres as well.
Mm-hmm.
In the westerns, it's kind of like, well, if you're marooned in the desert with no water, you're probably not going to last too long.
No.
If you're lost in the wilderness in Japan, or you're somewhere with no resources, and no money, and no weapons, like you're boned.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly, and that's actually a very strong reality. In I keep coming back to Bone Tomahawk, but that is part of it. Just getting it stuck out there. And your horse throws a shoe, and you break a leg, and there are hostiles, and you know what? We gotta leave you behind because we're not gonna finish if we have to carry you along, and that's just that reality of the wilderness imposes itself.
Absolutely.
But if we want to talk about proper mashups, and we've definitely been talking kind of the way that these two genres kind of feed each other. Like, you can take a great samurai story and make a pretty amazing western out of it, and vice versa. it kind of puts me in mind of the way that, you know, American rock and roll feeds English rock and roll, feeds American rock and roll, and they're just constantly like trading lines with each other, you know, because you've got 1950s rock and roll that like drops on England like something from a Martian cargo cult, and then you have the British invasion in the 60s, and then that kind of goes back and forth, and I feel like these two genres do that with each other. Otherwise, stuff like Cowboy Bebop would not exist.
Exactly.
Or Samurai Champloo, for that matter.
Exactly. I mean, there's a very strong awareness of both genres, and you can do amazing things with them. Which is why the other thing I know we wanted to talk about in this podcast was Sound and Fury.
Yes. Good old Sturgill Simpson.
Sturgill Simpson. Yeah. Which is kind of a thing that I don't know how many people know about it, because I keep seeing people discovering it. It's kind of one of those things that people have heard of, but I don't know how many people have seen. You've been talking to me about this, Mike, for a little while.
Yeah, so I heard a couple of his tracks, and I wanted to sort of check them out more, and then I saw, because some of Sound and Fury has been, just sort of cut down into individual music videos for some of the songs, and a friend of mine had actually posted it was for one of the tracks, I think it might have been Sing Along, from Sound and Fury, and I was like, oh wow, okay, like I like Sturgill Simpson already, but I didn't know about this, and so then I went and watched Sound and Fury, and I was completely floored, because it's definitely this mashup of both westerns and samurai
and anime
films, and then also like post-apocalyptic
and
the
music video, which is what it is.
Yeah, it's a 40-minute music video for Sturgill Simpson stuff.
It's an entire album as a music video. I feel like we should like explain to our audience what this thing is. And you can watch it on Netflix. It's called Sound and Fury, which is itself a reference to Macbeth. It's our second Macbeth reference of the night. Sound and Fury signifying nothing.
You've cursed us, man.
I have. And I think the best summation of Sound and Fury I found, believe it or not, from a YouTube commenter on one of the videos of Sound and Fury on YouTube. And I'm going to read it for you guys because it's perfect.
Go for it.
Have you ever wondered what would happen if a respected alt-country star went into surgery and in its aftermath refused pain-killing narcotics and instead just took a bunch of weed? Imagine then, in his fugue state, he decides to take a departure from country and produce a crazy good synth rock album. Now imagine he decides to have the entire album animated, writes a vague anime screenplay, goes to Japan, has some of the top anime artists compete to see who could be the nuttiest in producing his vision. He then puts it all together in a 45-minute montage that can only be described as the three-way love child of Heavy Metal the Movie, Akira, and The Wall.
Yeah, I mean, that's accurate.
Yeah, this is the best thing I've seen this year. It's my favorite scene I've seen all year on Netflix. And
cool.
I finally watched it like a couple of weeks ago. And I was blown away.
I've definitely watched it a few times. And I mean, like, the tunes are just really fantastic.
So good. It gets called a synth rock album here, and I think that's accurate, but it's got this grind to it. It feels very rock and roll. It feels very hard rock, but it's also synthy and
he's belting out the tunes like the whole time.
Yeah.
Like he can sing. It's really good.
And it's a revenge story, but it's also completely trippy in an anime kind of way. And there's literally stuff that's like, here's a samurai dude and here's a cowboy dude, and they're both doing this. They're both forging swords right now, and that's what's happening. And just accept it.
Yep.
And you are currently wondering where you put your drugs. Like, where did I put my drugs? Did I take them before I saw this?
You
movie?
don't need drugs. You just need to watch Sound and Fury. It's all the drugs you'll ever need. Music is itself a drug. I'm convinced. Yeah.
Yeah, they told me the secret ingredient to this brownie that I ate before watching this was love, but I think maybe there's something they left off the label. But I'm having a good time, so I'm just gonna sit here and yeah.
Yeah, I think the reference to the wall is pretty on point, because it's like the wall. It's very non-linear.
Yes.
Like the story moves forward in a certain way, but it also drops out, and stuff is not told in general linear order.
That's another thing that happens in both of these genres at times. I mean, you have that in Kill Bill.
Yes.
Have that in what am I thinking of?
Rashomon.
Rashomon, yep. Rashomon is another one. It's one of the most famous examples.
Rashomon pretty much invented the let's tell the same story from 5 different perspectives.
Something Tarantino likes to play with.
Indeed, and he's all ripping off Kurosawa. Everyone's ripping off Kurosawa, including George Lucas.
Oh, indeed.
Forbidden Fortress.
The Hidden Fortress.
Hidden Fortress.
Yeah.
See, 3PO and R2-D2 based off the 2 peasants in it.
Yep. Basically the same plot. Rescue the princess. Comic relief and, hero. I don't know if there's exactly a Han Solo character in Hidden Fortress.
Probably not Chewbacca either.
Probably not Chewbacca. But you know what? You get the right actor. You can get a samurai that looks like Chewbacca. You almost get that in 7 Samurai.
That is true.
So my advice is, before we start talking about Star Wars and The Mandalorian, do check out Sturgill Simpson's Sound and Fury. You can listen to the music, or you can just watch it on Netflix. It's 45 minutes out of your time. If you like a combination of rock and roll, revenge stories, anime, samurai stories, and just pure, unadulterated trippiness, it's a thing to watch.
Absolutely.
And you will not
be disappointed.
You will not be disappointed.
Having seen the clip that you shared with me, Mike, I think it's got to be the same anime house that did the Batman Ninja movie, which was trippy in a lot of ways that I cannot...
Oh.
You want to go watch a Batman anime flick with him being in Japan during ninja times and all that shit and wonder what the fuck is going on here and how the fuck is this working? Yeah, go watch that.
Yeah,
it's called Batman Ninja, and it's completely fucking bonkers.
I think you're right that one of the animation houses that did part of Sound and Fury was on there. I think I recall looking at the credits, and there's at least 3 different ones that did various segments of the movie.
Yeah,
I have a hard time picking out some of the differences in some of the animation styles, except for the very beginning sequence does look different from all of the other sequences that follow it that are animated.
Uh-huh.
And there's at least one live action sequence. It's sort of a little more than halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely should see Sound and Fury, though.
Is it just called... You should. I actually started listening to some other Sturgill Simpson stuff as a consequence, because I'd never listened to him before, and he is just country as all get out. And I like it.
It's good. I hadn't really listened to the genre much since I was a kid, and my folks had sort of older taste with stuff like that, like a lot of Hank Williams, Johnny Cash.
I love both of those guys.
It's the real. It's hard to go wrong with them. Patsy Cline.
Yes.
Dolly Parton. But I hadn't really listened to any of the more
Kenny Rogers,
contemporary stuff. Didn't really listen to him. But
at least with them, they were all consistent, and there was very little caterwauling about my pickup truck left me, and my wife is under the porch, and my dog slept with a neighbor. Wait, I might have the order of these things completely wrong. But, it's interchangeable.
All of those things probably exist in a song that really exists. But
yeah. No doubt. But I really like... I started listening to some of Sturgill Simpson's other stuff, and I also really like that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So, Kieran's been like trying to talk about Mandalorian, so let's do that.
So, first off, The Mandalorian is essentially a space western. I mean, in the great tradition of space westerns.
Like,
Like-
what am I thinking of?
Firefly, maybe?
Yeah, that's what it was, Firefly. I never watched it, so I don't remember it. It was one of those cases where it was one of those shows everyone was talking about, and I kind of got a vibe of rabidness in the fan base. It was like a Rick and Morty kind of feel, and I just didn't want to hang with that.
Yeah, no, the fan base of Firefly can be a little, the fan base of anything can be a little,
You're not wrong.
I am not. One of the things I am the greatest fan of, I'm terrified of the fan base. Transformers, like, I loved. Terrified of the fan base.
Sure.
I've been on the internet. I've shared some of this with Mike, and he'll tell you we have seen dark and horrid things from
On the internet, never.
from the Transformers fan base. But
You need say no
yeah,
more,
no,
my
yeah.
friend.
but back to the Mandalorian. Like I remember just from the first episode I saw and hearing the opening theme. And it's just got that. The opening theme itself has that Western feel.
Yeah, it's kind of a very unique theme song, especially for something set in the Star Wars universe, and it does feel very. It feels very Western, and it also feels a little samurai-y as
A
well.
lot. Like, there is, I can't remember which episode it is. It's the one where they introduce the character of Cara Dune,
Mhm.
and it's very much the Seven Samurai with, like, okay, two mercenaries, but it's pretty much, it's the same beats. It's the same beats of the Seven Samurai.
Right, and they team up and they save a village, and
Yeah. And it's like, and even the Mandalorian itself has a lot of beats of Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah, I was just
You
about
know,
to say I've
Lone
heard it
Wolf and
compared
Cub.
favorably to Lone Wolf and Cub.
mhm.
Um,
The Mandalorians themselves seem to occupy that place in the Star Wars universe of this, like, very rigid warrior sect that has
Yeah.
this, like, Bushido code. This is the way, and
Yeah.
they're deeply devoted to it, and that's an incredibly samurai vibe.
And then you combine that with there being on the, like, outer fringes of civilization and on a
Mhm.
lot of desert planets for that matter so far. And you just get this great space Western.
Mm-hmm. I really liked what I've seen. I resisted for a long time for very similar reasons that I never watched Firefly. Everybody lost their mind of it, and I saw so much Baby Yoda in my Facebook feed that I just didn't want to participate.
I wanted to not like it myself.
I
but-
did not want to participate because I didn't want to care about Baby Yoda, and I finally sat down and watched it with my girls, with my daughters, and they loved it, and I loved it, and it's
Yeah.
God. I don't know why the entire sequel trilogy wasn't this,
Lord.
or something like this,
I
right?
guess this is as good as mine.
Yeah, I mean, why not do something like this? They didn't have to reinvent the wheel. They
I
just
think John Favreau has a really good grasp of at least the movies I've seen him associated with or direct. He's got a pretty good grasp of taking something that exists and going with a particular vision, you know. And because he's done a variety of different types of films, but this one really, it hits a lot of good classic story notes. You know, the wandering mercenary who is trying to make his way in a shattered world, between two governments at this point.
Yeah, literally a shattered world, because it's not the Empire. The Emperor's dead. This is post Return of the Jedi, and
Yep.
the New Republic has not quite made its authority felt yet. There's still Imperial factions that have to be put down, which is all stuff that, existed in the Star Wars Expanded Universe for a while, and then I'm glad to see they finally did something with that.
What gets me, what I find that they do so well, is that it is fan servicey as shit, but it still does it in such a way that works with the story. Like, it doesn't the fan service, the callback to these characters doesn't feel like it's just a give me, you know?
Yeah, it's not like Rogue One.
No, it's just like, it's not like or like Solo.
I like Solo a lot better than Rogue One.
I don't know, man. I mean, I'll tell you what, I liked both of them a lot better than the prequels. That's for damn sure.
Well, the prequels are the lowest form of life that exists in the Star Wars universe. I would much rather watch even any of the sequels than sit through.
I will
Phantom
say
Menace
I
again.
felt of the sequels, The Force Awakens is probably the strongest one, and they kind of lost their thread to the next two films after that. But
They had no thread. They had no thread because this is Lucasfilm, and Lucasfilm doesn't have a thread. This is what we were talking about in an earlier episode, Mike, where it's like, it became so popular that quality control did not matter anymore.
Yeah, no, and editorial control, who cares? This thing prints money. Yeah,
it does. That's the thing. Everyone complains about the prequels, but they were profitable. They made money. We kept lining up to see them.
They made $1 gazillion. For
Yeah,
sure.
But let me tell you, man.
So is George Lucas wrong?
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and no. When you lose, like, because, Star Wars started out as his love letter to samurai and westerns.
And Buck Rogers.
And Buck Rogers. And
Republic serials.
And it works because it's a beautiful mash of those things. And The Mandalorian, maybe less on the... Well, no, it's serialized and a little less space opera-y than... It's more space western than space opera, which, Star Wars is strongly a space opera. But it works because it keeps those elements that make a western work.
Yeah.
Like... You watch The Mandalorian, like, this is a western. This is a western set in space, but this is a western.
It's also a samurai movie. It's
exactly.
both of those things, because both of those kinds of stories have the same elements of the heroic warrior who, while he may be down on his luck and while he might be he might be kind of cut off from society, is also sufficiently attuned that he knows how to do the right thing and has the courage to fight for it.
Very true. You see him do a lot of things, like from the beginning of the show to where it is now, that you can see how his moral compass has started to readjust and realign itself. And while the Baby Yoda, who they actually finally revealed what its damn name is, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Don't tell me, because
I'm not going to, because I can't remember.
I'm an episode behind.
But the Baby Yoda is both a character and a MacGuffin. And also insufferably cute. So toyetic as fuck, dude.
Yeah.
This thing prints money. No, sorry.
It does. It prints money.
It prints money. But they make that work.
Yeah. It's still working off story. I'm going to give it another couple of seasons before it's gonna do that thing that TV shows do.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's going to start, like... They're going to start running out of plots, and they're going to start rehashing stuff, or they're going to start messing with the existing logic of the story and doing things that the fans are going to hate. But we might have a good couple, two or three seasons before we get that. The third season will tell.
Yeah. The third season will definitely tell.
I was afraid to start watching it, but I'm starting to think that maybe I will. And part of that is... Yeah, I mean, so many shows get canceled after 2 seasons these days because the production companies don't want to have to pay the extra money for yada yada yada. There's a lot of stuff that just gets canceled after 2 seasons. So I was like, I kind of want to watch this, but
it's good. At least
it does not disappoint.
No, I also went in being like, I don't want to participate in this dorkitude, and I was kind of sold after the first episode. For all the reasons that Kieran's been saying, it hits that space western vibe. You've got that lone wolf. You've got that the kid that needs rescuing. You've got bad guys. You've got good guys. You've got people who might be good or might be bad. There's lots of... And you get to learn something about these people, these Mandalorians who nerds have been talking about
forever
since Boba Fett,
Oh yeah,
Who
Star Wars Christmas special. I remember seeing it airing when it first did.
Let's not speak of that.
We shan't beyond the reference.
Yeah.
The thing I find telling about The Mandalorian is my wife knows of Star Wars but has no love of it and considers it to be more than vaguely fucking ridiculous. Loves the
She is not wrong.
Loves The Mandalorian. Absolutely adores it. She just likes the overall story and the characters.
Well, that's
and
good.
And I think that says something. If you can take someone who finds the overall franchise to be utter nonsense
Mm-hmm.
and then tell a story with it that they love.
Yeah.
And going back to our theme, it's those samurai and Western elements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
The hero that does the right thing.
And it doesn't necessarily reward them in fact, it usually goes. There is very little reward most of the time to their heroic shenanigans, and usually a pretty swift kick in the tailpipe.
Yeah.
Usually one of the best rewards you can get at the end of if either of these films is, and somehow life returned to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the best case scenario, and it is not guaranteed, and it does not actually happen often.
No, it's the thing to be aspired to, and I think that's the wilderness. So it's that grand fight of order against the wilderness. We were talking about justice earlier, but I think that's also just trying to fight against the chaos.
Absolutely.
They're, like you said it before, they're very much universal.
Mm-hmm.
Within them, you can find space for a lot of self-reflection and exploration, I feel.
That's a good point.
Because we all like to think, to do a little armchair psychology here, but
Mm-hmm.
we all like to think that we are the hero in our own story, and that's not necessarily true. We're certainly the protagonist of our own story.
Mm.
But heroism, that's a rare thing to find in, your average person. And I think one of the ways, and that samurai and cowboy movies speak to that, because you very rarely have a purely heroic protagonist in these. Like, they are flawed. They do messed up crap. They kill people pretty quick over silly nonsense, or just to make a buck. And yet somehow they serve justice. Yet somehow they manage heroism.
Mm-hmm. That's Yojimbo right there.
Yeah.
And also
Absolutely.
a fistful of dollars. So, yeah.
And I think that speaks to people because of that,
So I think, you just have to find a way to dust off the tropes and make the genre speak by caring about it. You get the sense of, to speak to Mandalorian, that, Favreau, cared about the material, cared about just refining it and giving a clean story, giving us a hero / anti-hero that we could relate to, giving us something that was just for it, which is weird that to consider that Lucasfilm seems to have forgotten how to do that.
Well,
Yeah,
that's man.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just
you don't.
Just care. Just care.
Just make it a really nice wheel. Okay?
Yeah.
The wheel rolls. Don't gotta improve that. Making the wheel octagonal does not help you. It does not help you.
Just make sure the thing is round.
Replacing the wheel with a sphere also does not help you.
Not necessarily. No, I don't think so.
No.
Check out my sweet ass trapezoid wheel, y'all. No,
man.
But look, it has angles, man. It has angles. I'm subverting your expectations.
Also,
Yeah, but it doesn't
my
roll
ability
very
to go
well.
anywhere.
Exactly.
Oh, that oof. That was on the nose.
Yeah, it was a bit. I couldn't avoid it. This is different.
But does not serve its actual purpose.
Just make it round. It's fine. It can just be round.
You can make it out of something weird. We don't care. It could be a Jello wheel. I mean, doesn't really support weight much, but there you go.
You could go somewhere with it.
But you can't go nowhere with a trapezoidal wheel. It do
not
not
happening.
roll. You're not making it a thing. It do not roll. Stop trying to make it a thing.
Stop trying to make it a thing. Stop trying to make trapezoid wheels a thing. It's never going to be a thing. Have we just gotten to the point where we're just hating on art house cinema? Is that what we're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, inevitably the podcast always devolves into that at some point, but I think I think we're at that point now. So.
I mean, we haven't developed the point that we've all of a sudden taken on French accents and been like, ugh. Oh, this is just wonderful.
I would watch this, but it just seems so pointless to me.
Pardon-moi while I readjust my beret. And now I shall rail
Oh,
about...
this just increases my sense of ennui to
Yeah,
unbearable
Oh, no, this just really
degree.
pisses me off.
That McDonald's and Coca-Cola.
What is the fucking point of McDonald's in America if you cannot order a beer? Because you can't actually do that shit in Paris. But
Yeah, I know. I feel like every time I find out about that, I realize how hosed we are. I should be able to get a beer at McDonald's.
I'm like, well, Jacques, you raised a salient point.
Yes, yeah. I can't argue that.
I don't want to. No, I don't think you should drink at a McDonald's because I don't want to be drunk in a McDonald's with the people that are also in a McDonald's.
Whoa. We're talking about McDonald's. We're not talking about like Taco Bell or Denny's. McDonald's will be okay.
I mean, I've been drunk in all three of them personally. I can't.
I mean, I too have been drunk walking through a McDonald's. I mean, it's blackout drunk walking through a McDonald's drive-through at 3:00 in the morning in College Park. Brought to you by Southern Comfort.
Did you just say walking through the drive-through?
I got out of the truck that I was not driving, that my best friend was. I got out of the truck, walked through the drive-through, did my order, picked it up, and then walked back to the truck. And they asked me why, and I gave them some incomprehensibly drunk answer.
Because the Green Fairies told you to.
I mean, something told me to. Apparently I had a line of logic they couldn't argue with, but
Oh, that's just drunk logic. There's nothing that beats that.
there's nothing you can. But McDonald's is not a place. I mean, yes, I have ended up drunk in these places, but it's not a place I want to start my drunk.
Touche, sir.
Okay.
It's
Fair.
where it's like Denny's. You don't want to start your hangover at Denny's. It's where it's where your hangover finishes. You don't know. It's just some places you don't.
It's where you go when you realize you've had too much and you want to try to like put some food in there to soak it up. So yeah. Okay. Different purposes. I understand.
It's like no one goes to the IHOP for the atmosphere.
You're not wrong.
No one goes to the IHOP for the atmosphere. At all.
I go for the blueberry syrup. That's why I go.
I go for the pecan syrup, but I feel you.
Good choice.
And they're endless stacks when they do that every once in a while because I find it very hard to resist an endless amount of breakfast food when offered that as an option.
Now I'm all
pretty compelling.
hungry. Now I'm hungry.
Blame my wife. She made me waffles this morning.
Oh,
Lucky you.
I'm hungry now.
Well, she does that. So, well, I mean, I cooked most of Thanksgiving dinner, so, fair
Ah,
play.
yes.
She was going to make me pie. She did not make me pie. There is still pie crust dough in the fridge, awaiting to become a pie, but it is not pie yet.
Well, all you need is to just put something in it and put it in the oven. I mean, conceptually, pie is quite simple. There's a lot of details that go into it, but the concepts are there. It's like the Mandalorian. It's conceptually quite simple. You just have to care about the details.
Attention to details and consistent logic.
I brought it round.
Well done.
I did it. I'm high-fiving myself.
You have herded these cats, sir. Now see what you have won. Oh, look, a full litter box. Well, damn.
Nothing. I've earned 92 minutes of podcast. That's what I've earned.
Excellent. We stick a fork in this?
I think we should. I think it's time to stick a fork in it.
Yeah, I fear it can only go downhill from here.
I want pie, so there's really no reason to continue.
I want a beer, so they're definitely...
Yeah, it's time to pause to have pie and beer and move on with our day. All right?
All right.
Indeed.
All right.
Well, this has been Shallow and Pedantic. I'm Kieran.
I'm Mike.
And I am Andrew. And thank y'all for stopping by. We shall chat at you anon.
Later.